Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Brajajanaran Jamunatira Vanachadi Tira Vanacha Jamunatira Vanachadi Tira Vanacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Brajajanaran Jamunatira Vanachadi Tira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Harividagacharya Astatara Satasri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Okay, very good. During this Thanksgiving holiday weekend, I've been preparing for hundreds of hours to share with you Tattva Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami. Tattva Sandarbha is one of 6 Sandarbhas, or expositions on the Srimad Bhagavatam by Jiva Goswami, as his image is shown here on the screen. This is part 2 of a 2-part series, because this Tattva Sandarbha, we'll see the different sections of it, but we covered last Thanksgiving holiday the first half, basically, and I'll explain that as we go along. But as we did during the first half, it's proper etiquette. It's the appropriate thing to do, to first appreciate the person who we're going to be hearing his writings from, Jiva Goswami. So not as lengthy as I did last time, but just some appreciation. There's some persons here that are quite new to Krishna consciousness, so I'll say some things that are especially for the newer persons here. Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago, and behind him he left Bhagavad Gita, because it says in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita, that when he appears, there are 3 things. Whenever he appears, he gives protection to the devotees, he diminishes the influence of the non-devotees, or he annihilates the non-devotees, one or the other, and then he establishes dharma, or spiritual teachings. So his spiritual teaching is Bhagavad Gita. And the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is to surrender to Krishna. In the following age, or yuga, Kali Yuga, Krishna again appeared to teach how to live a life of surrender to Krishna. And starting with the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of Krishna's holy name, as we're all doing, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So along with the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, there's a life of devotion. And that life of devotion, in its mature stage, is called prema, Krishna prema. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate. Lord Chaitanya is the most munificent, magnanimous of all incarnations of the Lord, because he is directly giving Krishna prema, love for Krishna, of the highest quality love for Krishna, in the mood of the residents of Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya came to give that. And the life of devotion, up to the stage of prema, love for Krishna, is found in the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So rather than write an explanation of Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed his disciples, principally Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, and told them, you write. And so, out of the many, many, many superlatively elevated associates of Lord Chaitanya, amongst them were 6. And when the curtain again opens, you'll see the 6. They're on the altar, just below Lord Jagannath. The 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, one of them being Jiva Goswami. So Lord Chaitanya instructed Rupa and Sanatan, who were the uncle of Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami instructed Jiva Goswami in the science of Srimad Bhagavatam and told him to write this wonderful literature. The Sandarbhas can be described in different ways, but it's a particular type or category of commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. Like Srila Prabhupada made a verse-by-verse commentary. Jiva Goswami did one of those, called Krama Sandarbha. Then he wrote another one, just on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Then he wrote another one, called the Sat Sandarbhas or Bhagavat Sandarbhas. And it's a very simple way to appreciate the quality of his writing, the strength of his writing. He wrote 400,000 verses in Sanskrit. Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000. Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses. Mahabharata is 100,000 verses, so it's like he wrote a Mahabharata, about 7 or 8 Srimad Bhagavatam, 6 or 7 Bhagavad Gitas, and a whole bunch of other books. And one of ISKCON's devotees, brilliant Radhika Raman Prabhu, did his PhD thesis on 3 verses out of those 400,000. Of course, he made reference to other things, but my point is very, very deep, very profound, very strong. The intellectual capacity, acumen of Jiva Goswami, on more than one occasion, Prabhupada said, there's never been and never will be a greater, brilliant person in the world than Jiva Goswami. He's up there. And there are many other things that he did, but he's most known for that, for his writing. His scholarship is incredible. In addition, Jiva Goswami had deities from when he was a small boy. His biography says that he had deities of Krishna, Balaram, and he loved the deities. Instead of playing boy games, he just worshipped his deities all day long, cooked for them and made garlands for them and made offerings for them and paid his obeisances crying before them, and then did it again and took them to bed with him at night. And he was attached to Krishna Balaram. It's a long narration. When he later went to Vrindavan, his uncle, Rupa Goswami, with his own hand, didn't go to the marketplace and get some deities. He made deities for Jiva Goswami to worship and gave him their names and gave Jiva Goswami a place to stay, and he gave him everything. So these are the deities pictured down here. They're now in Jaipur. They previously were being worshipped in Vrindavan. So intimate was their relationship. It's just another one of his unique features of his bhakti. He would sing verses of the Bhagavatam, and Radha Damodar would dance. He would speak with them, and they would speak with him. He's on another level of Krishna consciousness, and many, many other contributions. I'll mention one of the additional contributions. Well, 2. He gathered a library. The volume, what to speak of the quality, the volume of the writings of the Goswamis and the followers of the Goswamis was enormous. And he had the presence to know later generations will need these. So he engaged many, many brahmanas in making copies because they could only make them by hand, and kept a library. In fact, he kept 2 libraries. And that library of Jiva Goswami had the presence to make a will so that his library would be protected by his will. It wasn't done in India at the time. What to speak of by a sadhu, make a will. But he had the presence to see that the property, intellectual and physical property of Krishna and his library would be protected by his will. Another great achievement of Jiva Goswami is he continued the line of disciplic succession. So traditionally, that in the worlds of religion, some charismatic spiritual figure gives his life and his teachings to the world, and that brings followers. And the next generation following that teacher, there's often schisms, and the next generation after that, they're gone or is lost. Often that happens, again and again. So following Lord Chaitanya was Rupa Goswami and many other great personalities, but the next generation, so that it didn't get lost, was carried forward by Jiva Goswami, who in turn trained others that would continue the disciplic succession. Great contribution. So our exercise this weekend is to offer tribute to Jiva Goswami. Amongst the 6 Goswamis, young, the others, well, he and Raghunath Das Goswami were also young, but the others were significantly elder to him. Gopal Bhatta Goswami was also quite young. And their chief amongst them was Rupa Goswami, who they accepted as their superior, yet at the same time Rupa Goswami looked to Sanatan Goswami, his elder brother, in the regard of a Shiksha Guru. And he then composed under the order of Rupa Goswami, at the request of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, in other words, was an independent venture, he composed these 6 Sandarbhas, or sometimes called Sat Sandarbha, sometimes called Bhagavad Sandarbha, all 6 together. This word Sandarbha means weaving, literally, weaving of verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, the purpose of which was both systematic and comprehensive presentation of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And simultaneously, it was a presentation of the teachings of the Sampradaya, as well as a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam according to theme. You know, the verse by verse is one, and then theme by theme is another. And I don't mind saying I'm a Jiva Goswami fan. I really like him. So if I get a little enthused now and then, please excuse me. It's not just because he was scholarly, but the insight and the profound and systematic and comprehensive way that he presented everything was so wonderful. Now, little explanation of Krishna Consciousness 201. Many of you, most of you, adults at least, have been to college, so you know there's something 101 and 102, and then the following year is 201 and 202, so this is Krishna Consciousness 201, meaning Well, gee, I haven't even gotten through 101 yet, so maybe I don't have a place here at this 201 level. Well, an explanation, in part, is when we have audiences like this particular audience, and commonly, there's people that are experienced, but there's always somebody new. And so we try to make presentations that are within the grasp of those that are new. And so it's introductory and introductory and introductory and introductory and introductory and introductory. So from time to time, devotees have asked, is it possible you can do something that's specifically not introductory so that it's, we can go a little more deeply into a subject matter? So I thought about it and said, that's a nice suggestion. So once a year, I decided I would try to do that. And it's been very nice. And for those of you that are new, well, it's 201, it's not 101. But a little appreciation of even though it's 201, here's a nice image of a little sprout coming out of the earth. And the image to me goes like this. Every one of us, whether we're beginning, intermediate, or advanced, whatever our stage of Krishna consciousness, something that we all share is within the core of the heart of every living entity, there's Krishna Prema. It's something like a seed. And a seed can sit in the earth or in a jar or in a bag for years and years and decades, and you can't count how long it can happen. But at some point, you may want to sprout that seed. And so there's a system for sprouting seeds. So similarly, that seed of Krishna Prema that's within everyone's heart, and each one of us has some conviction, a core conviction, that you could say it a spiritual faith or core conviction that there's a reality that's beyond the everyday stuff. There's a higher, we're not maybe too sure exactly what it is, but there's a higher spiritual reality, and we want to connect with that. That's the seed. And in the spiritual marketplace, there's a zillion. Start looking around and you'll find 20 zillion options and variations on the theme of. So many options. And it can be confusing if it's just the platform of the mind looking at those various options. And even so, we're selecting from those options the process of Krishna Bhakti. How does it develop nicely? So the system of how it develops nicely is, Mataji, could you take the child somewhere else? I don't know if you can read that so well. Our core conviction is like a dormant seed. And the deeper Krishna consciousness is fast asleep. We're dealing with circumstances around us in a day-by-day matter. So many things we have to deal with in a practical way. but that we know that the core Krishna consciousness is far away, or it's deep, deep, deep asleep. We're far from that higher consciousness. And how is it to be awakened? The Vedic system is awakened by sound vibration. And so the initial sound vibration for us is the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It's something for everyone. Doesn't matter. Just people on the street or anywhere. Spiritual sound vibration of the Hare Krishna mantra awakens that seed. It helps to sprout the seed, as the image shows. Then comes this same spiritual quality. We'll hear it within the Sandarbhas directly. This Srimad Bhagavatam, it has this same spiritual quality. And even if you don't understand everything, if you're a new person, or you're an intermediate person, some of the things you can understand, and some of them it's not so clear what's going on. It's going to act in a spiritual way, just because it's spiritual sound vibration. Now, there are concepts, just like in Bhagavad Gita. I've been hearing Prabhupada speak in morning walk conversations of late. I've been listening to those, and again and again and again, he says that they can't even understand the base conceptually. Dehi nosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara. The soul is passing in this lifetime from babyhood to boyhood to youth to old age. And then similarly at the time of death, the soul passes on to another body. They can't understand it. It's so obvious. We can see it, and they can't understand it. So how does such a thing become understood? Well, it requires a number of, but it starts with hearing, along with Mahamantra, hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and living a life of purity, striving to live a life of purity, and gradually Krishna consciousness awakens, just like the sprouting of a seed. The coverings, this dense darkness of ignorance, becomes dispelled. But it's not just, whoops. Okay. Okay. It's not just another, I call it an academic lens that you look at things through. Study medicine. And then so bodies may look like objects for enjoyment to some, and they look like different elements and different structures within the body meant to be healed. And if this isn't in order, then there's this problem. But the message of Srimad Bhagavatam is more than that, far more than that. Srila Prabhupada spoke about the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, that it's not an artificial imposition on the mind. Chanting and the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam it's very different than an academic thing. An academic thing is it's out there, and you bring it in here, and then you see that way. You impose it upon the mind, and then you can see differently than you saw before you imposed it on the mind. It's not that. It's of the soul directly. And I'll just give one example, and then we'll move on. In the, we'll hear it 4 times in this second half of Tattva Sandarbha. There's some discussion of Buddhism and how the teachings of Buddhism compare and contrast to the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, there's different brands of Buddhism, just as there's different brands of Christianity and everything. But there's something that they have in common, and that is voidism. And with voidism, there isn't acknowledgement. There is not acknowledgement of consciousness. Rather, it's the moment. All there is the moment. Vaisheshika Prabhu, be here now. Vaisheshika Prabhu was sharing, he was visiting in New York some time ago and distributing books, and somebody came up to him on the street. He was wearing his dhoti, said, "Are you enjoying being in the moment?" Because that's a Buddhist notion. There isn't a soul. There isn't consciousness of the soul. All there is what you might call consciousness is awareness of this, and then this changes, and then it's that, and awareness of that, and it's just, reality is the moment. And the goal is to go beyond the external to the point of void, or nirvana, or nothingness. So that notion is discussed 4 times in the Sandarbhas, what we're going to be hearing while we're together. Jiva Goswami points out that according to Srimad Bhagavatam, it's not so, and according to common sense, it's not so. He by scriptural reference and by logic, it's not so, and then presents what is so. There's a place of consciousness. That's the soul. The soul is, you'll hear this several times, conscious and consciousness. The soul is just like a lamp is luminous, and a lamp lights up other things around it. Similarly, the soul is conscious and the soul is consciousness. So the soul, through the lens of the mind, may be conscious of the control room back there, the nice devotee making sure everything is going very nicely. And then consciousness can shift to what's going on the altar. And so the object that you're conscious of may change, but the place of consciousness is unchanging. Now that's a lens. More than the lens, though, I want to make the point. Srimad Bhagavatam is such that it awakens that higher consciousness. It's not just changing lenses as an exercise. Put on rose-colored glasses and you see the world rosy. Put on dark-colored glasses and the world looks dark. So it's not just a matter of how you look at the world. It's a matter of changing consciousness. That's the nature of this sound vibration. So, Krishna Consciousness 201, if you don't understand everything, I can say I've been through this many, many, many times, and it's taken many, many times for me to receive the message and feel that my consciousness is changing, not just I can adjust to a new lens. I hope you get the point I'm making. It's spiritual sound vibration that awakens our dormant Krishna consciousness. So even if you don't understand everything, don't worry about it. Continue to hear and know that it's acting to gradually awaken your dormant Krishna consciousness just through sound. Now, another very important question is, why go through this exercise anyway? In fact, why did Jiva Goswami even go to the trouble to compose it? And why should we go to the trouble to study it? Well, I've given some indication already to help awaken our dormant Krishna consciousness. Some of you from India may recognize where this is. Varanasi, or Benares. It's a holy city, and this particular location is the Shashvamedha Ghat in Benares. It has a lot of rich history connected with Lord Chaitanya. And those of you that know a little bit about Lord Chaitanya's life, the first half of his life was spent in Navadvip. At 24 years of age, he took sannyas. He was wanting to go to Vrindavan. His mother requested him, don't go to Vrindavan, go to Puri, because many of the devotees from Bengal will go to Puri for Rath Yatra, and I'll get news of you when they come back. If you go to Vrindavan, I may never even hear of you for the rest of my life and your life. So he accepted, he went to Puri. But he wanted to visit Vrindavan. So when he finally, lots of interesting obstacles were put in the way, but when he finally went to Vrindavan, he passed through Varanasi, or Benares. And he stayed at the home of Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar. They were devotees of Lord Chaitanya. And then from there he went to Vrindavan, and then on his way back to Puri, he again stayed at the house of Chandrasekhar and Tapan Mishra. When he was staying there, something happened that disturbed these two. The Mayavadi sannyasis were ridiculing him and speaking badly of him and making fun of him and saying bad things. So they revealed their hearts to Lord Chaitanya. It disturbs you. For you don't mind. You're transcendental. For us, it hurts our heart. So, just as they were speaking in this way, Brahmana came and invited Lord Chaitanya to come and take a meal at his place, along with all of the other Mayavad sannyasis in Benares. What that means is, it's a seat of opposition to theism. Strong opposition to theism, to exactly what Lord Chaitanya represented. And so Lord Chaitanya was never agreeing to such invitations, but suddenly agreed to this one. And when he came, there were thousands of those sannyasis, led by this one, Prakashananda Saraswati. And in the course of the exchange between Prakashananda Saraswati and Lord Chaitanya, he asked, "You're an elevated personality. Why are you associating with these bhavukas?" There's the rest of the Bengali. And you're engaged in singing and dancing, things that sannyasis aren't supposed to do, carrying on with ordinary people, not just ordinary people, but bhavuka means fanatics. Now, have any of you ever heard that kind of characterization of, why do you do this? Go on to the public street and chant and dance like you're fanatics, or come to the temple and see people singing and dancing. Some people like it, some people don't understand it. Maybe some of you have been criticized for something like that by people that don't understand. So what did Lord Chaitanya do in response to this question? First of all, he explained why he was chanting, but Prakashananda Saraswati understood, your reputation is you're a big scholar. So, do you have a proper understanding? Sannyasis are supposed to understand Vedanta Sutra and study it. Lord Chaitanya said, I've understood Vedanta Sutra. He asked for an explanation. And when he heard the explanation, and all of the associates of Prakashananda Saraswati heard the explanation of Vedanta Sutra, they never heard anything like that before. It was so clear and direct, and rather than indirect. As we go along, we'll hear some of the convoluted explanations of Mayavad just about the soul, like, ABC. And they then fell at his feet and accepted his teachings. And then Lord Chaitanya instructed them, you should also chant Krishna, Krishna. "100 years later, the same thing happened again. Jiva Goswami went to the same place, Varanasi. He studied under Madhusudana Vachaspati, who taught him all these atheistic doctrines, and then he went to Vrindavan, and Rupa Goswami taught him Srimad Bhagavatam, so that he could do the same. So persons that don't understand a life of devotion can better understand a life of devotion. So here's some answers to the why question. If we can understand the Sandarbhas properly, then we'll be better equipped to explain and also help nourish faith in the bhakti process for ourselves and for others. It's a good exercise. It's authentic. It's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, and Rupa Goswami did, and Jiva Goswami did, etc. So that's one of the reasons why Jiva Goswami wrote it, and why it's worth it for us to try to understand its message, even if it's a little bit above our capacity. Continue to try to understand anyway. Another reason is, as we become more acquainted with the truth of Krishna, or understand Krishna in truth, we'll have more impetus to surrender to Him and serve Him and love Him. Now, I found this just a little bit of sharing. Just before coming back to the States, I was with a group of devotees in Dwarka. I'd never been to Dwarka before, but it was very nice. For 11 days, it was just pastimes of Krishna in Dwarka, and places where Krishna went from Dwarka nearby. So it was Krishna, 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 hey. This is also Krishna, 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 hey. It's the teachings that are the foundation for the pastimes, or the pastimes are exhibiting the teachings or displaying the wonders of Krishna, the truths of Krishna. So here's the philosophical foundation for those truths of Krishna, understanding which, hearing and understanding which, will provide greater impetus to take shelter of Krishna, surrender to Krishna, serve Krishna, love Krishna. Another reason why to take our time and trouble for all of this is, according to Lord Chaitanya's teachings, according to Rupa Goswami's teachings, the stage of Prema Bhakti, this awakening of our seed of love for Krishna, is strongly enhanced by regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam with rapt attention. And in the handout little package you all received, if you registered, there's some quotes where Prabhupada says exactly this. By studying of the Sandarbhas, it will enhance your ability to focus very carefully on the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which then helps to awaken your Prema Bhakti. So that's a good reason to go through the trouble of studying this carefully. And another is, Lord Chaitanya came to give a gift. He came to give the gift of love for Krishna, as the residents of Vrindavan have love for Krishna. That was his gift. And he gave it to many, but especially empowered was Rupa Goswami. And he also gave that gift to Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who then made a systematic, comprehensive set of notes, which he then gave to Jiva Goswami and said, you publish it, supported by Rupa Goswami to do so. Gifts from Rupa Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and Jiva Goswami to do what? Give the gift of Lord Chaitanya, Krishna Prema. If you want Krishna Prema, you have to receive it. You can't generate it on your own. It by descending mercy. So that's another why reason. And then finally, this is all just background, I haven't even begun. There's an objective in this work. There's a strategy for that Jiva Goswami follows, and it's a very simple 1, 2, 3 strategy. In the previous Thanksgiving weekend, we covered the first one, which is Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest pramana. Pramana means evidence, or the means of knowing something. Anything. And if you want to know transcendence, you need the best pramana, you need the best evidence, you need a non-fallible source. Otherwise, you're going to make mistakes. So that's what we covered in the first section. Very tightly done. And then the rest of the Sandarbhas is covering this second one, that Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. That's a little more intricate. You not only have to say what the Srimad Bhagavatam's teachings are, but it's the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then the conclusion is very simple. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest. Because anybody following any tradition wants to say that. That's their duty. This is the highest. Jiva Goswami is doing that. Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest evidence. The Bhagavatam is teaching Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest. Right? A equals B, B equals C, A equals C. That's his strategy. So the book begins. By the way, we have copies. Very kindly, some devotees brought copies from India because BBT Los Angeles ran out of copies, but there's copies of this book. So the first section is this Mangala Acharana. Mangala Charana. It's invoking auspiciousness. There's 8 verses, and put in simple terms, it's an introduction to the entire work, all 6 of the Sandarbhas. What is it? There's prayers to Lord Chaitanya, as appreciation of Gopal Bhatta, without mentioning his name, that he gave him the text to be edited and compiled and revised and put together in a comprehensive manner, the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. And basically he's saying, I want to talk about Krishna. But then, before speaking about Krishna, let us be responsible and say, what's the best way to know about Krishna before we talk about Krishna? That's what we covered last Thanksgiving. Pramana, or the source of valid knowledge about Krishna. The fancy English word is epistemology. How do you know anything? Like existentialism. How do you know anything? Maybe some of you took a course in school about existential philosophy. Pretty boring. Anyway, you can't know anything because there's no means of knowing anything. Nothing is real. Nothing matters. Existential. All you know is you exist. That's all. That's one idea of epistemology. But so there's different means of knowing things. So Jiva Goswami goes through and reaches the conclusion in 30 to 35 hours of discussion. Srimad Bhagavatam is the best means of knowing Krishna, or for that matter, anything. Then this evening we're going to cover the next section, which is methodology. Anybody that's been in academia knows you're supposed to do this. When you write a paper, you say, what are the references, at the very beginning, what are the references that you're going to be using, and how are you going to use them? You have to be transparent and accountable for your audience, those that are going to review your work. So that's what he does. And then the majority of what we're going to do starting tomorrow morning is this prameya kanda, and that is, what does this pramana, this valid knowledge, say? What is its subject matter? Or ontology. So I'll just very quickly say, that has, it's a lot of verses, as you see at the bottom, text 29. We're going to start there tomorrow morning through 62. And there's 3 sections. One is the realization of Shukadeva Goswami, the speaker, and the realization of Vyas, the author. What's in their heart, and what were their realizations, and that tells you what Srimad Bhagavatam is. What is the subject? That's one section, largest of the sections. Next is by understanding a drop of seawater, you can understand the whole sea. By understanding a particle of gold from a gold mine, you can understand the gold mine. By understanding the living entity, you can understand the Supreme, because the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme. So he does that, because that's the subject of Srimad Bhagavatam, is the Supreme. So how are we going to understand the Supreme? By understanding the living entity. That's where this Buddhism thing and Mayavad comes in. He deals with them. He's not afraid. He doesn't hope nobody will notice and he tucks it under the rug. He brings it out and then addresses it very strongly. And then the third, what is the subject matter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this highest source of valid knowledge, comes from understanding Shukadeva Goswami saying, what are the 10 subject matters of Srimad Bhagavatam? And one of them amongst the 10 is the shelter of all the others. So we'll hear that before we're done. So that's Tattva Sandarbha. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time, won't take too long, with this methodology and sources of reference for Tattva Sandarbha. So, Jiva Goswami follows a standard. He follows the same standard as Vedanta Sutra follows, because what's Vedanta Sutra? Vedanta Sutra is a summary in little codes or little aphorisms of the entire Vedas, and particularly the Upanishad section of the Vedas. And it does, by each of those codes, is called an anukarana. There we go. So Vedanta Sutra 111 says, just makes a statement. Atato Brahma Jigyasa means, now is the time to inquire about the Absolute. Just makes a statement. So Tattva Sandarbha follows the same system. Just makes a statement. That statement just happens to be one of the statements of Vedanta Sutra, and Jiva Goswami, is restating something that's in Vedanta Sutra, although he doesn't refer to which part of the Vedanta Sutra it's referring to, or which part of the Upanishads that sutra is referring to. He just makes a statement, just describing his methodology. Next, after making this anukarana, he then quotes a verse, or more than one verse, directly from Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam is our highest reference, or valid source of valid knowledge about whatever that statement is. Then he says what Srimad Bhagavatam says. And then the third step is he then makes comment. Commonly, he says, his comments are coming from Sridhar Swami. We'll hear a little bit more about Sridhar Swami. Sridhar Swami was a commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted. So Jiva Goswami naturally accepts. And also from Ramanujacharya and followers of Ramanujacharya that give teaching consistent with Ramanujacharya. He's describing his methodology and his sources of reference. Specifically with Sridhar Swami's commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, there's an interesting little controversy. Not really a controversy, but for some it's a controversy. In Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, we'll hear a little bit more about it. This is little information. Lord Chaitanya met Ballabha Bhatta or Ballabhacharya. They were contemporaries. Some of you from India, you know who Ballabhacharya is, from the Pushti Marg, from the Vishnu Swami line. And Lord Chaitanya was from the Madhva line. They met. And Ballabha over here was telling Lord Chaitanya, Sridhar Swami made mistakes in his commentary. I have a better commentary. I want to read it to you. The next slide will explain that. Jiva Goswami teaches, it writes in Sandarbhas, there was a particular strategy that Sridhar Swami had in mind. The particular strategy of Sridhar Swami was, he knew that Shankaracharya had interest in Srimad Bhagavatam. How did he know that? In your handout sheets, there's Govindastaka. Govindastaka is Ashtaka, it's 8 songs or poems or prayers written by Shankaracharya about Krishna, Govinda, the pastimes of which only are found in Srimad Bhagavatam. That means he read Srimad Bhagavatam, he liked Srimad Bhagavatam, he glorified Govinda from the passages of Srimad Bhagavatam, but made no commentary on it. The followers of Shankaracharya knew he liked Srimad Bhagavatam. So the strategy of this now Vaishnava, Sridhar Swami, was he wrote a commentary where there's some mixture of impersonal ideas to keep those people attracted, but mainly as very pure Vaishnavism. It was a strategy. You follow? Jiva Goswami understood that, and therefore he says specifically, when he makes reference to, not so clear. Okay. When he makes reference to Sridhar Swami's commentary, he will only refer to those that are in line with Vaishnava teachings, and he won't even touch the others. So it's a primary source for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and similarly a primary source for Jiva Goswami. This is he's 2 verses, he's giving his methodology and his sources of reference. Here's the Chaitanya Charitamrita text. This is an image of Lord Chaitanya. This is an image of Vallabhacharya. When they met, it was in Puri, Vallabhacharya said, whatever Sridhar Swami reads, he explains according to the circumstances, therefore he is inconsistent in his explanations and cannot be accepted as an authority. The very next verse, quoted, Lord Chaitanya said, one who does not accept the Swami as an authority, I consider a prostitute. Very next verse. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted Sridhar Swami as an authority. And if you don't accept the Swami, or because another meaning of Swami is husband, then you're a prostitute, according to this explanation. So, accepting the quality, accepting the quality of Sridhar Swami, who was previous to Lord Chaitanya, he honored him in that way, and so Jiva Goswami also honored him in that way. And we're almost done. Text 28, that was text 27. 28, he makes reference to Madhvacharya. This is Madhvacharya, when you see a painting of a sannyasi holding 2 fingers up in the air, it means it's Madhvacharya, because he was a teacher of Dvaita Vad, strongly against Shankara's teachings. And Jiva Goswami says, whenever possible, he was very honest. He was known from childhood, like Yudhisthira, always honest, strongly honest. So when you get in spiritual topics, it's really easy to borrow from here and borrow from there and don't be accountable. And Jiva Goswami wasn't like that, very strict. So he says, I've either seen personally the references that I make in the Sandarbhas, or I've received it from Madhvacharya. Now, Madhvacharya had a history of traveling through India several times, gathering literatures. He had a photographic memory. Some cases he just read the book and then wrote it later because it was already in his mind. But he kept a library. They had a huge, fabulous library that, according to one historical report, the library burned. And so many of those texts are not available now. Jiva Goswami specifically says over 200 references that he makes in the Sandarbhas come from Madhvacharya, texts that he has not personally seen, but he has all confidence in Madhvacharya, who wrote about those references, although he couldn't go examine the text because they're no longer available. So that's the methodology section, texts 27 and 28. So now we're ready for entering into what does the Srimad Bhagavatam have as its main subject? What is that truth that this valid source of knowledge reveals? What is it? What's it talking about? What's its subject matter? So we'll start that tomorrow morning. And it starts with Shukadeva Goswami and Vyasa's realization. Okay. So any comments or questions so far? I hope I haven't lost anybody. Mainly the intention is to give you before you get on the train, you know where the train's going. What's the big picture? What are we doing this for? And what's the method that Jiva Goswami is? It's not just in Tattva Sandarbha, it's the method of the whole Sandarbhas. He's going to consistently follow the same methodology and consistently draw upon the same sources. Because he's already gone through the exercise, brilliant exercise, of explaining why Srimad Bhagavatam, he accepts, and we should accept, Srimad Bhagavatam is the best source of knowledge to know about Krishna. Okay. So we'll see you all tomorrow morning for the Prameya Khanda section of Tattva Sandarbha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now somebody very kindly visited Radha Govinda Mandir and brought Radha Govinda Mahaprasadam, and I'm going to move around and pass out some Radha Govinda Mahaprasadam to all of you.